Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Yoga Sciences podcast and YouTube channel. I have Alicia Wild here today. She's a yoga instructor. She's the creator of the Flux Fit program training, and she's currently working on being a yoga therapist. And our last interview interviewed Dr. Amy Wheeler, and she's the director of the International Yoga Therapy Association. So that's really cool that more people are hearing and wanting to know more about yoga therapy. Thank you for being on with us today. And
thank you for having me, Pan.
Thank you. She has a lot of specialties in the area of working with people with trauma and injuries. So I'll let her take over in terms of, just get started with us sharing with us how you got started, Alicia, and what got you to work with people with injury and trauma, and how you come up with this idea of the Flux Fit idea.
Okay, so my program is called Flux Fit Soul, and it actually stems from my first love, which was welding. I was studying to be an underwater construction worker when I found out about 4 autoimmune diseases that I have genetically, and I had to reinvent my life. I could no longer continue in the industry. Yoga had always been a part of my life, but it just hadn't been a focus up until that point. I needed to rehabilitate my body. I'd gone from being able to lift 300 pounds of metal and sit on an I-beam while being lifted by a crane and welding things together or climbing around on boats to not even being able to get out of bed at age 21. So it took a really big hit on my ego. It took a really big hit on my body. It took a really big hit on my mental health. And I needed to find a way to build myself back up. I started with yoga. I started with hot yoga. I started with different injury rehab programs. I became a nutrition coach to try and figure out how to feed my body better. I went to see naturopaths and everything like that. And when I realized just how much I had to deal with, I really didn't have a lot of help in that department. I'd been on my own since I was 15, and it's just been a little bit frustrating. So my idea was, how can I make this more accessible to other people? If I'm suffering as much as I am, or if I'm dealing with as much as I am, I can only imagine that there's other people out there, and maybe I can bring something to them. Maybe I can make it more accessible. Maybe I can show them another way, or help them heal through sharing my story or sharing my experiences or any skills that I've learned along the way. So I became a yoga instructor. I became a personal trainer, nutrition coach. I got specialized in aging bodies, so people over 55 plus and what goes on as you get older, and injury rehab. Those are where I really spent my focus. My idea is to become a yoga therapist in this way and work with people all over the world, or even just in my community, because everybody needs help on some front, whether it's stress management, pain management, or rehabbing an injury, anything. Like, everybody needs something, and I'd love to be able to help them along that journey.
Right. Thank you for sharing your experience and the whole, healing process. So what went on in the process? What kind of the transition, you healing and the whole journey in terms of what you were trying to do and what helped and what didn't?
It was super frustrating because I felt like my entire identity had been stripped from me. When you get diagnosed with a chronic illness, you lose track of just about everything for yourself. And my plan A, B, and C all had to do with welding and all had to do with the construction industry. So I was like, well, who am I without all of these things? So seeing the naturopath was the first step along the journey of figuring out what the diseases were, how they affected each other, because each disease affects one in an opposite way, which can make it worse or better depending. And then trying to be able to balance all of those things, getting my diet on track, that was another big one. And then building up my strength again, because I had lost everything. I went from being 160 pounds of muscle to 98 pounds and not being able to get out of bed in less than a month. So it was really, really scary, and super humbling as well. And I had the support of my doctor and my own I guess inner strength and will to do everything that I needed to do in order to rehab me, because I wasn't ready to die. That's basically all I knew, was I'm only 21. I shouldn't be dying. I want to live my life, and I hope that I can do this in a way that is good for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, what were the diagnoses that that the doctors ended up finding out?
I have a disease called Sjogren's, which is light sensitivity, and as well as like dry mouth, issues swallowing. I have an irregular vomiting disorder that they don't really have a name for, where I don't take in food and nutrients the way I like a normal stomach would, and my body pushes it out. So I've had a lot of extra acids come up in my throat, and I have some holes in my esophagus and like tears that make it very difficult to swallow, and actually adds to that Sjogren's bit. I also have a functional gastrointestinal motility disorder that causes a brain to gut dysfunction. My body doesn't process hormones the way it's supposed to, or create them the way it's supposed to. My body is very much affected by my mental health. So if I feel something, it'll manifest physically. Like those whole, like if you get so upset you're sick to your stomach, that's an actual reality for me. If I get angry, I can feel my temperature rise, things like that. It's a very strange thing. So I've had to like really work on like my mental health a lot through this, and dealing with my own traumas and my own past, because not being in control of my emotions affects my physical health. I also have a blood clotting disease that I can't pronounce because it's so complicated. It's thrombopenita something or other. And that one is also stemmed from the emotions. If I get overloaded physically or overloaded emotionally, I'll break out into blood clots all over my body. It's pretty frustrating sometimes.
It must be challenging to deal with. So, how are you dealing with this? Like, what are some of the things that work that will work for you to just basically be able to maintain being healthy and be able to go out there and teach and help others without having like basically having a set of symptoms coming on and interfering with your activities?
Right. So every day I deal with chronic pain, my stomach, my throat, my body, like my joints, everything hurts on a regular basis. By doing gentle yoga practices throughout the day, eating properly. So by that, I mean like whole foods, and actually high protein foods are really good for me. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be vegan or vegetarian due to the level of protein and the types of protein that I need in my body. I am constantly working on my mental health, and trying to take different programs or learn different things about counseling, or join in on DBT groups and things like that, just to like become more aware of my emotions and where they're coming from, how to understand them so that I never spiral out. And then again, the physical side is staying active, being outside, maintaining a proper diet. It's all the normal things that a normal healthy human would have to do. I just have to do them with a lot more intention, as I am excuse me as I have a lot more that I deal with in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go out for a treat of something, like if I want to go out and eat dinner somewhere, I have to be very specific about the restaurants that I choose, because if they use a lot of processed ingredients, I'm going to be in a lot of digestive pain that day. If my metabolism were to ever shut down, if I don't eat regularly enough, it's a lot of pain to start that back up again. And sometimes the food doesn't stay down. Maybe I'm in the bathroom for the next 45 minutes trying to make sure that it doesn't come back up or out the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
like when things like this happen, you're more aware of what you got to eat, what you got to do, you're just more conscious, right? Like some people who doesn't have to deal with that stuff might just really just do whatever, and then eventually they're gonna feel it. They might not get that, they might not feel it right away, but then eventually it's gonna hit them. So just basically just eat healthy, like you said, and then be aware of what you're doing
yeah,
to.
I have to go in every 3 months for transfusions and checkups and making sure, because my diseases are degenerative and chronic. They affect my systems. Like if I were to get sick, let's say I get a common cold, it affects me deeply. I was actually just sick in September, and the common cold turned into strep throat, turned into bronchitis, turned into pneumonia, turned into I need to be in the hospital for 2 weeks. So it's being able to stay on top of that kind of stuff, that's really hard. So I have to do these regular check-ins with McMaster Hospital, making sure that I'm going and keeping updated with flu shots, and making sure that I'm taking care to wash my hands properly before eating and touching my face. And I just have to be extra careful. It's all the things that normal humans have to do every day. It's just I do them with a little more attention.
I'm sorry to have to deal with all that.
Oh, it's all good. I've been used to it now. I just turned 30, so I've already lived 3 years past when they thought I was going to live. So I'm really excited about that, and like that gives me a lot of hope for the future that I've been able to turn stuff around as much as I have, and like this just makes my message more important for me to share, because it's like it doesn't matter sometimes what the doctors say. You may have a diagnosis and you may have a prognosis of you're only going to live till you're 27, but you can turn that around for yourself with mindset, with intention, with physical activity, by getting outside. I do manage with cannabis as well. I have a prescription for that where I take CBD to help manage my chronic pain and moods, and also to help me eat and sleep better. So there's a lot of different routes that people can take in different ways to help their bodies. They just need to have the information be accessible to them. They need to have it be at a price that's affordable. The naturopath was a super expensive journey for me. I lived on my own. I've been on my own since I was 15. So I spend a lot of my savings trying to figure out my diseases and figure out what works. So my goal was to try and make that available to the rest of the community in a way that was a lot more affordable to them.
That's so true, the whole awareness, and especially this is not as common, and for you to share your story and just get other people to know about it, and they might hear your story and say, oh, I have those symptoms and I haven't been diagnosed, maybe that's something that I need to look into. Because a lot of doctors, if they're not aware of it, they don't see that as very common. They might misdiagnose you, and it could lead to other problems, like this trial and error thing. It could be.
Yeah, I was really sick as a kid a lot. My stomach was always a problem. And then as I got older, more systems were affected, but they just thought it was a digestive problem. They just thought it was a hormonal imbalance. So they would just change a pill or change this or add another pill. And it never really fixed the problem. It wasn't until I got the proper diagnosis that we really started to figure things out. So yeah, you're right. Awareness is a big one. Understanding what's actually going on, having doctors that are really accommodating and they really listen to you. That's another big one for me. It's hard because my symptoms can be kind of mild sometimes, and then other times they can be quite severe. And if I keep getting inconclusive results, I want a doctor who's going to push that envelope a little bit and push for me and try for me, because they know more in that department than I do, and I wouldn't be able to help them figure that part out, but I would need them to advocate for me.
That's so true. I actually haven't been really exposed to these type of things. So if you have like any resources or any links that I could probably share in the description of the video, so just in case people want to check it out.
McMaster Family Hospital has been the best one for me. I will say that. They have a clinic there called GYMRAC, which is General Internal Medicine and Rapid Assessment Clinic. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the show House, where he's a doctor and he's a specialty diagnostic doctor, where he deals with all of the random cases that don't make any sense to anybody else. That's the kind of team that I have. They're a team of doctors just like that are specialty diagnostic, that are very curious and they want to search into that. I don't know if there's another group like that in Toronto, but I do know Hamilton has McMaster Hospital, and that clinic is amazing. I will swear by them forever. They really helped me figure it out. And then the Naturopathic College in Toronto was another great resource for me, because they had some student rates and they had some rates for when you were dealing with like a resident doctor versus the overseeing doctor. So that was a little bit more helpful trying to figure things out. They were really thorough with their examinations and their questions and their interviews to try and determine not just what was going on now, but what's been going on for a long time, to see the patterns, how that's developed and how it's changed and what that could mean in terms of diagnosis.
Wow, that's really amazing that they're all working together and working as a team to figure things out for you, with you, and kind of just, yeah, that's great.
Hamilton Health Sciences is amazing here. Everything is interconnected, their entire health system. So if I go to one hospital on one side of the city, they have my file from the other hospital. They're able to look at my entire record and see what's going on. So it doesn't matter where I am or what happens, as long as I'm within the Hamilton Health Sciences districts, I am able to be seen by any doctor, and they're able to have my full history. And I don't have to go through all the details with them. They're able to look through, see what works, what doesn't, what's recommended, what my doctors have done in the past. And I think that's amazing. That's super helpful. Yeah. I feel like more healthcare systems need to be on a front like this.
Right. It could save a lot of headaches because I've heard stories where one person goes to one place and then they don't go to go another place and they have to like basically explain the whole thing all over again. And it's like takes a long time. It's frustrating.
No, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. It's not an easy journey. And then on top of that, when you're in a hospital, you may see 3 or 4 different people, and those 3 or 4 different people don't seem to have the notes from the other people. So you're constantly repeating yourself and you're just getting more and more frustrated. Meanwhile, you're sitting there suffering in some kind of pain, discomfort, whatever it happens to be.
Exactly. And especially the way, like, when people deliver messages, telling stories, sharing, anything, and then the message as it's transferring from one person to another, it can be misleading and it cannot be, sometimes it won't be 100% accurate. So
Yeah, you get doctor broken telephone happening.
mhm. Right. All right. So with all this going on and you're really managing everything really well, like you're handling it really well in terms of, like you said, you got to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally, and be able to just be positive and be able to make a difference.
Sometimes it's actually not just about being positive though. Like I find that it's actually the being realistic part where, no, this part sucks. This is not a fun thing to deal with. This being realistic about if I don't take care of this, this could happen kind of thing. That realism actually is what helped bring me back. If I was too positive, that like over positivity didn't help my situation, it would give me false hope. And if something went wrong, it was almost more devastating. So by being realistic about it and being okay with both the good scenario and the bad scenario, I was okay with anything in between. But it really came from being real and being true and being, nope, today is not a good day, and being honest about that with the people around me or anybody I care about, and telling them what was going on in my life, not hiding it. So that realism factor was huge. That made a big difference. And then I was no longer hiding it out of shame or scaredness or whatever it happened to be. I could be my real self, my full self. And at the same time, I'd have good days and I'd have bad days, but I accept both. You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah, definitely being realistic about it. Yeah, so true. So like with your let's shift a little bit to the flex
Flux Fit
fit.
Soul.
So yeah. So how's it? That's a creative name. So how'd you come up with that one?
So flux is actually what you would find on the outside of a welding rod, and it's the protective coating that goes on top that protects the weld while you finish welding whatever it is you're doing. So I really wanted to pull from like my past life, like what I was doing before and where my love was and what that passion was, but also the side of protecting your body and making sure that you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of while you do it. And then the other side of flux is that it's always adaptive and it's always changing, and it's something that will evolve and change and grow with you. The fit part is about being fit, body, mind, soul. The soul side is like putting your heart into it, being passionate about it, living for the things that make you happy. Not like I had the choice of being on a million immunosuppressants, not a million, but a lot of immunosuppressants and other types of drugs that would basically turn me into a zombie. I chose to say no to those doctors and say, no, that's not what I want for my life. And then take a different path, have them work with me to find that path and live a life that makes me happy rather than being bedridden the whole time or being in constant pain and not being able to live life the way I want to.
hmm And you do this. It's like, how does it work in terms of it? It's like a program thing. You do private
Yeah, so
session.
it's kind of like personal training meets yoga. I do an intake with you where we do a little mini mobility assessment and we talk about your life and what your goals are and what you're dealing with and what kind of things that you'd be open to trying or not trying. And then through that, I develop a fitness program and wellness program that helps you manage what it is that you need to manage. I make it fit your life, your resources, your time frames, whatever it is that you're dealing with or whatever it is that you need to accommodate in your life. And it's very much individualized. I do weekly check-in phone calls. I have a renewal program where we reassess the mobility and how things are working so that we're constantly checking in with each other, making sure that I'm delivering the right information in the right way for them, but also that the information is landing and working well for the client.
Mm.
Excuse me. The program always changes and adapts with the client itself, but it's very much personal training meets yoga. So I do a personalized interview, personalized assessment, personalized programming, and then I have some core values that I include along the way, some things that I like, lessons that I like to incorporate from my journey, and then I just translate them for the client in a way that relates to them.
That's awesome. I really like that. It's like really structured and you know exactly what to do with your clients. That's awesome.
It's more about the freedom to really give them what they need. I have very small amounts of things that I want to deliver to them. And it's really, I learn so much from them. I learn more from them than I do from what I've already learned. Everybody's experience is so personal and so different. Like I had two clients, they had shoulder injuries, and one shoulder injury was done in the exact same way that the other shoulder injury was done. However, their healing process was completely different. Their bodies healed differently, their bodies moved differently. So the exercises I needed to use, even though it was the same injury, I had to use different exercises for the different people because of how their bodies needed to heal.
So then this is more for like individual, not like group, right? So do you
I
do group?
do small group classes as well, but again, they're just small. I teach out of the Lost organization in Hamilton. They're another type of mental health resource, and it's living free of suffering and trauma. They want to, like, living outside suffering and trauma is what the Lost stands for. And they are an amazing community that is, they run groups, they run art therapy, they run all kinds of different things. And I teach with them too. And that's kind of like my way of, another way I give back to the community, where it's me collaborating with other professionals, other healing professionals along the same lines, doing the same sort of work, just maybe from a different angle.
That's great. Like the difference, what would you say the difference would be in terms of like how you would approach this population, this group of people versus your the injury ones? I mean, I know there's gonna be big difference in terms of like the injury population versus like people over 55 and the whole transitioning.
So with trauma, it's more of an invitation. I'm telling a client what to do or a group of clients what to do. I invite them to try things. I invite them to try it this way or try it that way and play with it in a way that makes it work. I do this with injury rehab clients as well. I'm just more conscious of it with my trauma clients. I always ask permission every single time I give a hands-on adjustment if they'd like that, if they change their mind, or if something's happened or something's come up or they don't want to be touched today or they don't want a head and neck massage, that's totally fine. I'm very non-judgmental. It's mostly me holding space for those groups and giving them the space to breathe and giving them some new tools or techniques to cope with their emotions or the things that may pop up in their body, because trauma can be held in the body for a lot of people. And if they're feeling something, it may affect them physically as well. So it's learning how to identify that and working within their own boundaries and their own triggers, easing into a pose. It's all about being gentle with their bodies and taking a new mindset on how they approach themselves and working with themselves. I'm teaching them new ways to talk to themselves and treat their bodies so that they can create that connection again. A lot of the times what happens with trauma is we become either disconnected from the body or overly connected to it. So it's finding that balance for them.
I know this is more like individual based type of program that you would do with them, like in terms of like the poses and stuff, but you know how sometimes they're like general poses for relieving tension, relieving trauma, stress, or pain. Like what are some of the examples of like the things
It
that you would
depends.
do?
Again, this one is very individual as well. Just because some people have experienced trauma in different ways. If someone's experienced sexual trauma, laying on their back with their body face up in a lying down pose may feel really vulnerable to them. And that's one of the basic calming poses. Maybe something more like a child's pose would be more for them. Like something like a happy baby would not be something that I would bring to a trauma-informed class, because that may also make them feel super vulnerable. I don't even get into downward dog in trauma-informed classes a lot of the times, because that's something that can bring something up. So they're really super gentle poses where they're pulled into themselves, or poses where they're like a recovery pose from first aid is a really great one, where you're lying on your side with one hand under your head and then one knee bent over. That can be a really calming one. Sometimes even just sitting with your back up against the wall so that you feel the wall behind you and you feel the ground below you, putting one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. This is ways to start relieving tension within the body, just breathing into your body, like literally just taking a deep breath. Sometimes it's really hard for people to just slow down and get to that point. But one of the favorites in class is child's pose. Everybody seems to want child's pose. They can put their head on the ground, their knees are safe, they can be curled into themselves, they can be arms outstretched, whatever it happens to be that they may need at that point. But it makes them feel grounded and safe and almost like they're hugging themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Like teachers need to be aware of what people have experienced, and then figure out, be creative, like in terms of what you should do and you shouldn't do, and what can trigger something. And for those that can't really tap into the cause of the trauma, or getting deeper into the, basically bring it out and be able to kind of relieve it. So what are some of the steps, like visualization or meditation or breathing techniques that would kind of just
I use mostly breathing techniques and meditation for those types. Those types, they have a lot of internal things going on. A lot of them can be empaths, so sometimes they don't know if it's their feelings or somebody else's feelings. So I start to ask them questions while they're breathing. Where do you feel tight? Where are the tingles? What does that feel like when you breathe into that space? What does that sensation feel like? And then getting them to reconnect with their body, feel their ground on the feet on the ground, feel the back on the ground, feel their back against the wall. However it is, it's bringing them back in tune with their body and how their body is feeling versus how their mind is feeling, and how those two correlate to each other. I use a lot of deep breathing, calming techniques where 4 seconds in, 2 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 2 seconds hold, to kind of slow them down. But if each movement that I do, I will connect it to a breath so that they're always focused on the feelings and the sensations rather than what's going on in their head. If I occupy their mind with inhale, do this, exhale, do that, they tend to link the breath and the movement a lot more and become more body aware. And by the end of the class, everybody's breathing deeply. Everybody's a little bit more relaxed. Everybody's a little bit less tense, and they've might have worked out some of the physical tension, which helps them relax their mind to actually think the thing through.
I love that, connecting the breath with the movements. Do you also like do music with it, or you don't really kind of link music with
Sometimes if it's a private class, I usually let, like a one-on-one, I always let the client choose the music. If it's a small group class, like 6 people or less kind of thing, I like to find something that's not a traditional yoga music, that maybe it's like a piano or something classical, but no words. I try to find something with no words and that follows the pace of the class, that's gentle, so that they can tune into the beat of the music for their counts if they want to, and that it's a soothing sound but not a typical yoga sound, so to speak. So I don't use a lot of anything. I don't say Sanskrit words. I rarely ever use pose names, and I'm using anatomy and directions and proprioception in order to move their bodies rather than give them a name or say another language for them, so that it's a lot more accessible as well.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if somebody's new to this and trying to learn at the same time, trying to work on their trauma and working on their healing, and you introduce it like a Sanskrit work, and they're like, okay, that's something that I have to do.
I'm not out to show off how much I know. I'm just out to like help you heal your body and your mind.
Yeah. That's great. And you said there's another one you mentioned, breathe, love, or something. What was the other one that you used?
Breathe, Move, Love. Yeah, that's the name of the program. Flux Fit Soul is my business name, and Breathe, Move, Love is the program. So breathing deeply, that's where it all starts, connecting the breath with the movement. The movement part is also helpful. There's a lot of moves I can give you that help alleviate stress, or that help relieve tension, or that help alleviate pain, or that can help your digestion, or help heal your shoulder, your knee, your ankle, whatever it happens to be, your hips. So the breathe and the move kind of go together, and then the love. you want to breathe deeply and you want to move well. And then you can live the life that you want to in a way that you want to, and love your life again. Learn to fall back in love with yourself and want to fight for your body, want to fight for your mental health. Instead of fighting the world, grow within and heal from inside.
I love it. That's great. So what are your routines? You have a set of routines that you do on a daily basis to prepare yourself from getting up in the morning, like, throughout the day?
Yeah, so first thing in the morning, I like to do something I call cleanse the senses. I do a neti pot rinse. I wash my face, flush my eyes, clean my ears, those kinds of things. And those just help me ground. And then I'm touching in on my five senses. I like to include those in my classes. Like, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? So I do those exercises for myself as well. I spend my own time in meditation and practice in the morning. I like to have breakfast, usually a smoothie of some kind, because food is really difficult first thing in the morning. And I have a coffee because I still love coffee, because who doesn't? And I really take a lot of my self-care time first thing in the morning. So the first thing I do is take care of me so that I can better take care of my clients throughout the rest of the day.
That is so important. And
yeah, the balance was hard to figure out at the beginning, I'm not going to lie.
That's so true. So what are some of the books that you recommend?
For healing?
Just for personal development, for healing, for yoga, like related.
So there's a book called Let That Shit Go. That stuff is amazing. What's interesting about it is it applies for both the body and the mind. Tensions that you hold, or patterns that you hold in your brain, you also hold patterns in the body. And when you start to feel a certain way, you may clench your fists, or you may start to bite your nails, or things like that. So learning to correlate the physical with the mental, that book was super helpful with that. I really liked The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. His book is amazing. It really helps to get out of your own head a little bit, see it from another perspective, and sort of help change your mindset on things. It really helped me tune into my breathing. It really helped me understand on a deeper level what was happening with the breath and what that did for my body, like flooding it with oxygen, what that means, and breathing deeply before moving and how that helps, and breathing deeply after moving and how that helps, or how you can soothe the body and calm the mind even with just these deep breathing techniques, because there's certain ones that'll help soothe the vagus nerve, which is that fight or flight response inside of our bodies. That nerve is what triggers the fight or flight response. So if you can soothe that nerve with your breathing, you can help calm an anxiety attack and a panic attack even.
I love it. I love that everything that you're doing is helping you, and you're being realistic. You're trying to, basically incorporate what you're doing, and you're helping others.
Well, I wouldn't want to try something on my clients that I haven't tried on myself. I wouldn't want to give them a practice that I haven't worked out as well. I wouldn't want to practice something that I don't preach, or I wouldn't want to preach something that I don't practice. You know what I mean? I've been working through this a lot of years on my own, and I've done a lot of research, but I've also learned a lot from the people that I've worked with. So any way I can help people just makes me feel better. But it also, I learned from my clients. They help teach me how to take care of me better. Sometimes they're the ones giving me reminders. And that's really nice. That accountability back and forth, that shared caring is really, really nice and helpful. And it's a genuine care that really helps people heal, both for the teacher and for the student. I find that me being a teacher doesn't really make a difference. Sometimes I'm learning from my students. So does that make me teacher or student? It makes me both. And I find that being a good student has helped me to be a better teacher.
That's amazing. That's great. You said you do this in person and also online?
Yes, I've just recently started online sessions where it's a video chat, kind of like what we're doing, and I will talk and interview the client. It's a little bit slower on the video chat just because I can't demonstrate the same way. So I'll do something and then I'll watch them do it, and it's more like a back and forth conversation rather than a joint, I can show you some things physically next to you. The program still works. I've had a lot of success with the few clients that I've tried with the online sessions so far, though I do prefer in-person work the most. I find that's got the most amount of connection, but if I want to reach people, sometimes they're not accessible. Sometimes they're in another country, or sometimes they're traveling. So it's not always easy to get to them. So the digital sessions have been really helpful.
That makes sense. Right. So how can they find you, like on the sites?
They can search for me online. My website is fluxfitsoul.com. On Instagram, I'm flux.fit.soul. And on Facebook, my name is Alicia Wild. I also have a Facebook page for Flux Fit Soul on, like I said, on Facebook. I regularly put up posts. They can book in through my website. They can book in a free demonstration or a check-in phone call if they want to just see what that's going to be like first before they actually purchase sessions. They can see my plans and pricing online. They can also see what group classes I'm offering and register for those online as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you mentioned that maybe you could do like a special for the listeners that want to jump on this opportunity
that would be
to work
great.
with you.
Anybody who comes in who's been listening to this podcast, just let me know that you've been listening here, and I will offer you a 25% discount on all of your bundles and services for whatever it is that you'd like to book for.
Okay, awesome. And it's just use the code Yoga Science 25, right?
Yeah, Yoga Science 25. I like it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, Pan, thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you and talking about this. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and asking all of these wonderful questions. You've been a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you. You too.